What I love about this practice is that it requires of me the whole of my authenticity. I cannot pretend. I can't act. I can't say false statements that are false to myself. I can't lie about or to myself. It comes right out. It's clearly apparent. It's so blatantly obvious that it makes me cringe. So my practice in life has always been to be the most authentic that I can be in spite of the challenges and the adversity that I've faced. The challenge continues, but so does my strength. I couldn't continue this day without beginning this podcast. For months now, I've been thinking about starting a podcast on grief and specifically on living beautifully through grief, loss, and transition. There are so many ideas that I've picked up about grief over the years of dealing with it that I realized I actually have sort of a toolkit, an arsenal, if you will, really a medicine cabinet within myself of how to deal with grief as it comes. And I've dealt with a lot of family deaths and close deaths starting back in 2010. So it's been about 15 years that I've been dealing closely with grief, starting with the death of my mother. But I noticed that I have sort of a wellspring within of centered thought about death and about grieving and about loss and about transition, about practicing loss, about putting loss in our daily lives in small ways so that when the big losses happen that we can't control, we have a little bit more practice with it. Because I find that culturally, and I grew up in the United States, culturally, we just don't have a lot of really great practices around grief. And obviously I'm using the most PC, kindest language that I can find about describing our practices with grief, which are that there are none. It's more of an anti-practice of grief. But I've successfully gone through grief. I'm in my 30s now. I lost my mom when I was in my 20s, and then my biological father, and then my maternal grandmother, and then my maternal uncle. And then last year, 2024, I went to 5 funerals in the year and lost 2 of my best friends to death and 2 others to just sort of natural separation. So when it comes to the death part of things, I have experience with death, but when I think of grief, I don't think of just death, physical death. I also think of loss, of the practice of loss, of what I was saying, the everyday losses. I was mentioning before that the everyday losses that we can experience and even, even encourage within ourselves. Like, for instance, I could decide to lose $5, right? It's very silly. This hasn't happened, but I could decide to lose $5 today, right? I could walk down the street, I could take a 5 out of my wallet, and I could literally just let it go and keep walking and feel what that feels like to lose. Now, if it feels like nothing, if $5 is not enough to lose for me, then maybe I could up it to $20. What does it feel like to lose $20? Something that's more important, right? And I've practiced this in various ways. I mean, I had precious mementos of my mother's that I just had to let go, and I did it ceremoniously. I remember she had this beautiful scarf that I loved. It was like a beautiful coral color, and I would wear it all the time. And one day I took it to the ocean, or perhaps I was just wearing it at the ocean, and I just had the impetus to let it go, even though I really cherished this thing and loved this thing, and it was my mother's and it reminded me of her and it still smelled like her and all of that. My practice with grief began with the objects that I held dearly, and I think it's such a good practice to have. I give away things continuously. If I go see a friend and they like something that I have on, my instant thought is to just give it to them. Even though I really like this thing, I like all my clothes. I've curated my closet. I've curated my life at this point. But I know that the importance of letting go of something that I enjoy, that I'm still using, that I have a relationship with, the practice of that is is essential. It's essential to me now. It will be essential to me later when the big grief comes, when the big loss comes. I'm investing in a future of release, of allowing the feelings to come, the thoughts to come. I haven't forgotten that scarf. That was my mother's. Have I ever wished that I had it again? Probably. It's been so many years now, but I've probably wished that I had it again. There have definitely been some other pieces of hers that I've given away. I've wished I've had. I've grieved again because I say, damn, I wish I hadn't have given that away. But the fact is that I did, and there's nothing I can do about it now except experience the loss again, experience the release again when it comes up and I want it and I miss it and I can't replace it. So I think that's really my angle here, is to shed light and assist like a cultural shift into practicing grief in more holistic, beautiful, and centering ways. So a little bit about my backstory is, yes, I lost my mother in the physical form when I was 21, and that was back in 2010. And at that time, I was an elder sibling. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had actually left college the year before that, just kind of intuitively felt that I needed to leave. And I'm so glad that I did, because had I not, then I wouldn't have been there for my mother on her deathbed and spending every day with her, every waking hour, just with her, rubbing her feet, speaking with her, being with her, praying in this sort of energetic, silent way that I pray. And those moments are so special. And for the rest of my life, I'll remember that I was there and the way that I was there, and the bond that we were able to create in that space because I could be so present. And then, life took a really drastic turn that changed my life. It grew me up really quickly. I had to sort of help steward or shepherd my younger sister, who almost immediately got pregnant. And here's the way. With families, I believe, because it's something that I've experienced, that we have an option or an opportunity to be reborn, reincarnated into the family of our origin. So as my mother was dying and I was saying, well, I believe essentially in her resurrection. What I also believed is that her resurrection could come through another body. And when my niece was born, 11 months later, in the exact same room where my mother died, because my mother died at home and my niece was born at home, there was really the essence, of my mother still in the house, and the presence of her. And I've always had this feeling, my sister and I both have always had this feeling that my niece has at least the blessing of my mother in her return to earth, or her reincarnation on earth. Of course, my niece is her own person. I mean, there are certain things that she does and knows that sort of raise an eyebrow, between my sister and I, that, hey, it seems like she might know some things from the beyond. But yeah, it changed my life in so many ways. It was challenging, and to be honest, it's been challenging all throughout my 20s. It was extremely challenging to learn survival skills and adult skills and mothering skills, because I sort of became a second mom to my niece. We were parents suddenly, and specifically we were parents without our mother, which is significant. And so we sort of move through all of these phases of maybe, really young adulthood, but a forced survival that we're only coming out of now in our 30s, and being able to look back on those years and all of the transitions and changes, all the ways that we stepped up to the plate and became responsible sort of overnight, all the ways that we grieved together, that we grieve apart, all the ways that we celebrated life. Because my niece Sa is so wonderful and so beautiful. I mean, I had never experienced the kind of love that I had for her, like visceral love. I could feel the love in my body. I never experienced that before her. And that whole time, that whole decade really just pushed us into a kind of wisdom, a kind of closeness. And for that reason, I have a lot of gratitude for the beauty and the lessons in that time. And also, now in my mid-30s, I'm dealing with the repercussions of the anxiety, the stress, the neglect of my own body, right? Like, I'm dealing with those things now in also a visceral way, in a very physical, apparent way. That means I have to pay attention to myself, to what is balanced, to what is right for me, how to show up for my sister and my niece still, but have a boundary at, knowing where my cup is full and where my cup is getting depleted, right? This proverbial cup that I think we all do have. I mean, whether we call it our energy level or our attention span or our ability to function in it, like all those things are the cup. And for me, the cup feels like, the ability to listen, for sure, the ability to empathize, the abilities to receive information and reflect it back in like this ongoing sort of generative action. Right now with my hands, I'm rolling my hands like that old dance move from the 70s, the disco dance move. I'm rolling my hands in front of my chest. And that's really what it feels like. If I'm in conversation with someone and I'm receiving energy from them, say they're telling me something real deep, they're telling me something from the heart, right? What it feels like I do is I listen with this intent of like receiving what they're saying and instantly transmuting it. Even if I don't say I listen with like this prayer that whatever they feel will successfully integrate into their wisdom, into their culture, their personal culture. So it's active. My relationships are active. My communication is really active. And because of that, I only have so much energy at a time. So that's sort of what I feel when I talk about my cups. If my cup is full and overflowing, then I just have it to give. I have it to listen. I have it in flow. But, if I've been stressed, if I haven't eaten really well, if I haven't hydrated really well, if I am nursing an injury or something of my own, then, my attention needs to go into myself more. And I really had to learn that. And that took the decade of my 20s to begin to experience why I needed to learn that. And then the first half of my 30s to experience that and how I need to learn it to really start to implement the things necessary for me to grow, and to survive and to thrive as I'm being a community member, a family member, a sort of pseudo parent. And so in many ways, the decade changed us and grew us in ways that perhaps we couldn't have gotten any other way. It also requires a significant amount of stamina. It requires a significant amount of community. I don't believe that people are meant to grieve alone and or grieve silently. I think grieving silently is the thing that we do when we're stressed or frustrated about something or dissatisfied with something, and we're not speaking it, or we're not addressing it. I think that's sort of, it can become sort of a silent grief. And that's why we can get stuck in anger, the stage of anger and frustration. Because I definitely, let me tell you, after my mother was gone, I went into a deep stage of anger. And I was fully aware of it, but it was like I couldn't control it. I was like, I have to get this out. Primarily because my mother and I, as I was growing up, we had a really contentious relationship. We fought a lot. I often felt unheard, not even misunderstood. Like there was not even a desire to understand me. I felt bullied. I was bullied. And at that time, at 21, even though I had begun to work through some of those things myself to heal, my mother was essentially gone, before we could really have some of those deep, deep conversations that I think most kids desire if they've had difficulties with their parents. Most of us desire at some point to be able, at least, to talk to our parents about the things that we went through that they were complicit in. And, to some degree, I did have that with my mom. While she was on her deathbed, she apologized for things. She wanted to change some things. She wanted to go through what's called a rebirthing process to try to heal some of the wounds that she knew that she'd caused. But because my focus was so landed and so centered in just being of service to her, rubbing her feet, praying over her, praying with her, talking with her, just being pleasant and peaceful to be around her. As I knew she was transitioning, I just wanted her to have the smoothest transition into the ancestral realm that she could, because I love her. In spite of everything that happened, I love her unconditionally. And that is what showed up out of me. That's the strength that came out of me in that final 3 months of her life. And, so I didn't want to talk about that stuff from the past. I heard her say it and I just received it. I said, thank you, but it's that I'm not even, it's okay, But what happened afterwards was that, all the anger of the years, and I couldn't even describe exactly what it was. It was just an anger. And that's okay. Like, the point is to be aware, to allow the thing to come up and to be safe with it. And for me to be safe with it meant to have a container around myself, a place where I could express that anger, and also to have an outlet to transmute that anger. So I moved almost immediately into dance work and then into breath work. And both of those together combined, I didn't even realize at the time how much power they had to transmute the grief, the change, the anger. Oh, I also went to acupuncture, which I think is just, I would always recommend, if you can, if you know an acupuncturist and you have a deep grief, a sudden loss, see an acupuncturist. It might sound strange. You might be like, whoa, how can acupuncture help me with a mental thing? Look, let me tell you. The mental thing is always connected to the physical thing. We are experiencing everything that we experience through this physical thing, this body that we came in. So we can absolutely address mental issues, emotional issues through the body. And acupuncture was definitely top of the list for me. I immediately started going to acupuncture, and I talked to the acupuncturist about the anger that I was feeling. So that helped, and then I moved into dance and breath work. Really just all life-changing stuff, and these were tools that I learned to use without even knowing that they were tools. And now, in retrospect, I can see how powerful they were. So if you're in a process right now of grieving the loss of a loved one, dance. To yourself, but dance. Dance, and if you can't dance, breathe. You can definitely breathe. If you can't dance, walk, move the body, get the blood flowing, pump the body. I always think of walking as a pump for the body. It literally pumps the blood through the body, which is a great way of just moving energy, removing tension. So yeah, movement is really, really important. Breath is really, really important. I listened to a podcast the other day, The Diary of a CEO. And Stephen Bartlett was interviewing, what's his name? Sadhguru. And Sadhguru just gave us this wonderful gem of a tool. He was like, increase your breath by 15%. Just sit here and breathe and increase your breath by 15%. Feel how it feels to sit with your palms facing up as you breathe, increasing your breath by 15%. And then turn your palms over so your palms are facing down and continue breathing with an increased capacity of about 15%. And just feel how that feels. It's so simple. Basically, explore your body through breath. That's it. It's so simple. It's like, it's heinous that we don't know more of these tools just instantly. Like, this is stuff we could be learning in elementary school and kindergarten. So those things are tools, and food is a tool. So let's go more into some stories. Last year, 2024, I went to 5 funerals, right? The most significant one, I would say, what happened in the middle of the year with the death of a best friend of mine. We had been really close friends for almost 20 years. I knew her since high school. And I mean, this is like one of the friends I kept up with. We knew each other's changes in life. Like, we'd be surprised if we didn't know something changed. You know, we'd be like, oh no, we haven't talked. So we really kept up, like, through all of those years, through, I say almost 20 years. I think it was like 18 years. Let me do the math real quick. I met her in about 2025. So she died last year. So yeah, it was 19 years. Did I say 2025? 2005 is what I meant. It's been so many years. Okay, so I met her in 2005 and she passed in 2024. So it's 19 years of keeping up with each other, of rooting for each other, of knowing like the ins and deep parts of one another. She's one of my best friends and I was hers. And losing her came in stages, you know. It's hard to talk about, but it's necessary to talk about. So here's a content warning right now. I'm going to go into a deeper story of death and loss and transition and grief. Our relationship changed. I'd say maybe the last 8 years of our relationship, because she was on an SSRI. She was on a pharmaceutical brain altering medication that was prescribed to her when she couldn't sleep after she lost her mom. She took the death of her mom really hard. They were super close. I mean, like, attached close. Her mom was sort of like the only family member that meant a lot to her, that loved her unconditionally. They were extremely close and she was an only child. So the death of her mom, she took really, really hard, and she trusted the psychiatric industry to, you know, help her with the transition. And unfortunately, they prescribed her benzodiazepine that without really either they didn't know what the side effects could be, or they didn't care and they just put it on her. And she took it, and she also didn't know what the side effects could be. And it seemed to work at first, but she stayed on it. And the thing with these drugs is, I understand if we as people are in an acute situation. Maybe a drug will help with an acute situation, but the prolonged use of especially the psychiatric drugs, from what I've read and what I experienced with her, more often than not, prolonged use leads to organ damage, brain damage, other organs being damaged. Overall, just it's a trade-off that's not fair. So because of the damage that the drug was doing in her mind and body, she became less available. And sort of the last 8 years of our relationship, my experience of the relationship was more like a crisis friend, like I'd be there to pick up the phone if she was in a mental crisis and needed someone to talk to, and I would talk her through it and sometimes talk her out of it for the moment and help her breathe and help her sleep. And because of my love for her and my belief in her and my appreciation of our friendship and our connection, it felt like the right thing for me to do, to be of service to her, the same way that I was of service to my mother. But last year, I moved into a space of attention to centering myself, to aiding myself through physical health and also mental health, because I just felt sort of teetering. I was teetering on mania. I was teetering on physical ailments and disease. And I just said, I have to stop. I have to stop a lot of things. And at first I thought I just had to stop working and traveling so much and just sit with myself and drink juice and make food at home and really focus on cleansing my body. As a caveat to all that, which I did do, I also felt a drastic shift in my mind, in my mental capacity, my focus, my feeling of being centered. And with that came the need for me to sort of separate from some of the relationships that I'd been carrying for years, that I thought that I would be close with for years. I underwent a transition that required me to focus so intently that some of those friends I had to let go of. And I had already done that with 2 of my other close friends in the year. I said, I really love you. I appreciate you in my life. When I think of you, I'm going to think of you in love, and I'm going to continue to wish you well, but I have to make an exit here. I have to create some space so that I can focus my attention on what's trying to be born from within me. And then it came time for me to let go of my friend Shannon, my friend of 19 years who knew everything about me and who I knew everything about, who I thought there's just no way that anything would come between us. But I'd say myself came between us, and the need for boundaries, for self-care, for focused attention, and my need to channel my energy, I began to put first for the first time in my life. I mean, really, really put myself first. And that required me to also create some distance with Shannon. And I think that probably broke her heart, because she felt distanced from so many other people before. But I couldn't go with her into her life and into her choices. I could only manage my life and my choices. And specifically, I had to learn how to manage my life and choices in a way that built something rather than just settled in discomfort. And within about 3 weeks of having that conversation with her, she passed. And I knew that there was a possibility that she would pass, and I still made the decision to distance myself and take action to preserve and conserve my energy. So if I'm being totally honest, and sometimes I think that there's a brutality or like a harshness to my honesty, but it feels most right to me to do what my spirit calls me to do. And although I grieved Shannon's passing in some ways, I also had already released her to her life and the unfolding of her life. And now I get to sort of bring back this earlier idea that I shared, that the life continues. Whether it's reincarnated or not, I believe that the soul, the spirit as we call it, the life continues beyond the body. So even though she's shed her body, I still have a relationship with her. Just like I still have a relationship with my mother and with my biological father and my grandmother and my maternal uncle and my other friends and family members who've passed on since then. My relationship with them continues in the form of love and reverence. I will never say that they're gone. And even saying I will never say, let me rephrase that. My definition of gone will never be that something is non-existent. It may be that they're gone from this plane, they're gone from this planet in a certain way, they're gone from their body, certainly, but I feel the relationships continue. I watch other people feel their relationships with their loved ones continue past the point of the body shedding. And I believe that our work in accepting the lives of our loved ones who've passed on is to open our hearts and expand our love beyond the physical form. Like, it's taught me about unconditional love in a way that I don't know if anything else could teach me. It is beyond the form that they came in, beyond what I can recognize, beyond what I know. It's more than I have learned. And so my relationships with my loved ones who've passed on have sort of forced me into a type of listening and a type of reception and a type of open perspective that I have to maintain if I'm gonna be able to witness them in their new forms. I think that when people die, we can become like anything and everything. We can become a tree. We can enter into another person. We can enter into an experience or an event or a place. And our essence can be felt, through a song. We become formless. And because of that, if I want to continue the relationship with my loved ones who are now formless, I have to be open to receiving the evidence of them in ways that I couldn't fathom before or didn't recognize before. They're probably not going to show up in those exact ways, except in dreams. So I think that's enough to end on there. There are a lot of tools and ways of looking at grief and loss and dying that continue to reveal themselves to me. They continue to be a practice in my life. I continue to learn and experience the waves of challenge with grief and loss and transition. But with that also come waves of immense beauty and inexplicable wonder, really, at the power of life and love and relationships. Thank you, beloveds, for your listening ears. I so appreciate you being with me thus far. It wasn't easy to start this podcast because there are so many doubts that have crept into my mind, but I finally found a way, I think, that feels authentic and good and natural to me, and I needed that. I needed that to be able to communicate with you in the most authentic way, because that's what you deserve, honestly. That's what you deserve. That's what I want you to have, and that's what I want for myself. I'll end here with great thanks. Peace to you, beloved.